My name is Maris Ellington, 38 years old. By the time the butterfly streamers stopped shivering in the kitchen vents, the house had already learned how to hold its breath. Patrick's travel mug still ringed the counter with a crescent of coffee, and Gracie's glitter was ground into the runner like a constellation we'd keep stepping on for weeks. Ordinary life, bright and loud, was still scattered everywhere when the first hairline crack appeared. It didn't look like a crack. It looked like help. It looked like my sister. Darlene arrived the way sunlight arrives at the end of a storm, sudden, flattering, perfectly timed. She'd been divorced for 18 months and turned our back door into a revolving door of casseroles and school pickups, of "Don't worry, I've got them," and "Go lie down, Suze, you look exhausted." Except I wasn't Suze anymore to her. I was a calendar slot, a dinner rotation, a rhythm she could drum with both hands. She loved my children like a second chance. She loved my kitchen like a stage. Patrick said the joke is with a grin. I married the Brennan sisters, buy one, get one free, and Darlene would throw the dish towel and curtsy, as if comedy bowed to her. I laughed, because laughter is what you do when the world seems kind. I laughed when she rearranged the spice rack alphabetically, and when she hung new hooks for the aprons, and when she knew where the spare batteries were before I asked. I told myself competence is not a crime. I told myself proximity is not a plot. The Memphis conference came up the way chores do: mandated, boring, necessary. Pediatric sedation protocols, me and 40 hygienists in a cold ballroom sipping coffee that tasted like burnt toast. Dr. Brennan paid for the hotel downtown, and I bribed the kids with Beale Street t-shirts and a promise to FaceTime before bed. Patrick flipped eggs with that goofy flourish that still made me smile. Trevor complained about math. Gracie argued for a new Halloween costume because Emma had the same witch dress. Beautiful, chaotic, normal. "You sure you'll be okay with them for 2 days?" I asked, zipping my overnight bag. He flicked the pan like a showman. "It'll be anarchy. Pizza and forgotten toothbrushes. They'll love it." "Dad doesn't know how to make my ponytail," Gracie said through toast. "Aunt Darlene will," I said, kissing her hair. "She's coming after work." Darlene arrived with pot roast like she was auditioning for the role of calm. Professional blazer, perfect hair, a smile that landed a half-inch shy of her eyes. "Drive safe," she said, hugging me tighter than usual. "Don't worry about anything here. I've got Patrick and the kids." "It's 2 days, not Europe," I joked. She tilted her head. "You never know what can happen in 2 days." In the hotel, my key card blinked green. In the conference hall, lasers circled bullet points about dosage and oxygen saturation. I took notes, traded horror stories at lunch, and thought of Gracie's glitter in the rug. I called home that night. Everyone sounded fine. If I'd had a second set of ears, tuned to frequencies of dread, maybe I would have heard the hinge squeak when a plan swung open. Maybe I would have heard my sister's heartbeat running faster than mine. Saturday afternoon, I rolled my suitcase into our living room, sunlit and quiet as a photograph. Patrick's car wasn't in the driveway. Darlene's BMW was. No TV noise, no child sound. Just Darlene in my favorite chair, a manila envelope perched on her knees like a sedated animal. Her face was flushed and wet, mascara precise, as if sorrow had been professionally applied. "Maris," she said, standing slowly, "thank God you're home. We need to talk." "Where are Patrick and the kids?" My mouth had gone dry. The envelope had weight in the room. "I sent them to the park. They didn't need to see this." She held the envelope out with 2 fingers, like it smelled bad. "I'm so sorry. I didn't want to be the one, but Patrick deserves to know the truth." There were 6 photographs. A woman with my hair and shape at Romanos leaning toward a dark-haired man I'd never seen. The same pair walking too close, arms around waists, a hotel doorway at the Riverside Inn. A kiss, angled to hide her face. I felt the floor tilt. The timestamp said Thursday night, the welcome dinner. "These aren't real," I said immediately, as if speed could save me. "Darlene, you know I was at the conference. I called you and Patrick. There are rosters, keycard logs, colleagues." "You called from a phone," she said gently, like a nurse easing a needle in. "That doesn't prove where you were." She produced a receipt, Romanos, cash. "The waiter remembered you," she added softly. "Said you were affectionate." The house creaked. Something in me did the same. Patrick came in 20 minutes later with the kids. His face told me Darlene had already curated his version. "Kids, upstairs," he said, voice flat. Gracie looked back, confused, but obeyed. When the quiet settled, he kept his distance like I was contagious. "Patrick," I said, my voice new to my own ears, "call Dr. Brennan. Call anyone. The hotel has a key log." He stared at the window as if it could translate me. "The hotel logged you in Wednesday," he said, "but nothing Thursday. No door entry, no charges." Oh, dinner was covered. The ballroom was open. Why would there be charges? I sounded like a child explaining an unbroken vase. "Convenient," he said. The word cut. Darlene stood. "I'll give you 2 time," she murmured, then paused at me, close enough that her perfume, fig, and something sharp, filled my lungs. "I tried to protect you," she whispered, "but I can't lie for you anymore." She left with a practiced smallness, as if shrinking herself could amplify my guilt. By Monday, an attorney had been consulted. The speed was its own accusation. Drafts prepared, signatures poised, a timeline that suggested foreknowledge. In the courtroom, the photographs were arranged like tiles in a mosaic, spelling one word: liar. Darlene cried with restraint so elegant it felt like choreography. She had accidentally seen me at Romano's while showing a house, had followed from concern, had taken photos only because she knew Patrick would never believe such ugliness without proof. The waiter hesitated, then nodded. Yes, a woman with that hair, that jacket. The judge, Morrison, barely looked up as he read his decision. Primary custody to Patrick. The house to Patrick. 70% of our savings to Patrick. To me, supervised visitation. To me, the sinkhole where my name used to be. The newspapers didn't care, but people did. Neighbors, co-workers, the clucking chorus of a small city where decency is currency. At Bright Smiles, I kept my mask on, polished molars, and learned how to be pleasant while drowning. At home, if you could call a studio above a laundromat home, I taped my children's faces to the wall and told myself they were windows. What stayed with me from those first weeks wasn't the paperwork or the pit in my stomach. It was the afterimage of Darlene in my chair, holding that envelope like a trophy wrapped in sympathy. The way she'd learned the map of my kitchen. The way she'd slipped my apron over her clothes and said, laughing, "I could get used to this." The way she'd hugged me before Memphis and said, "You never know what can happen in 2 days." It would take 2 years to learn how early she'd started the clock. It would take an 8-year-old detective to turn the hands back. For now, the hands turned me. At night, when the washing machines throbbed below my bed, I tried to replay the dinner at Romano's with myself in it, to see what Patrick saw, to see what the judge saw, to see if any version made me look like a person I didn't recognize. I couldn't make that woman be me. I could only hear Darlene's voice, soft, regretful, necessary, and feel the cold fact that everyone believed her, everyone but Gracie, though I didn't know it yet. Everyone but a child who still trusted the way a mother's hands fit around a face when the world stung. Trust breaks like glass, loud, then nothing. The silence after is what does the work. It moves into your rooms and labels your things. It tells you what you are. It whispers when you brush your teeth and when you sign your name and when your son stops telling you about chess club. Because he has learned that telling is dangerous. It said, "This is your story now." It said, "Learn to live in the echo." I did what people do when they are crushed but upright. I worked more hours. I hired a new lawyer who had eyes like razors and a voice that didn't apologize when it was correct. I learned the price of groceries, the price of childcare, the price of one night's doubt. I learned to sit in a parking lot 5 minutes past when a visit ended and breathe like a diver resurfacing too fast. I learned that even lies, when framed, can look like family portraits. What I didn't know, what no one could hear over the hum of the machines, was that Darlene kept a second portrait in a closet behind a stack of shoeboxes, that she labeled it with my face, that she wrote notes in tidy bullet points the way some people write prayers, that Gracie's small hands would find it the way small hands find flashlights in the dark. 2 days had been enough to break us. 2 years would be the distance between a judge's pen and a child's proof. For now, all I had was the memory of a manila envelope and the taste of stale hotel coffee, and the certainty that something about Darlene's sorrow had clinked like a glass set down too hard. The sound had been there. I had simply mistaken it for love cooling. The studio above the laundromat vibrated like a living thing, a rib cage around machines that never slept. I learned its rhythms the way sailors learn tides, the first spin cycle at 6 a.m., the lull around noon, the midnight crescendo that rattled my cabinet doors and made my teaspoons sing in the drawer. I taped Trevor and Gracie's school photos over the stove because there was nowhere else to put them. It made every meal a visitation. I stood to eat. There was no table big enough to sit and pretend this was ordinary. The window smelled like steam and detergent. The bed was 3 feet from the oven. I kept my shoes lined up like soldiers under the counter because discipline was the only thing I could afford. At Bright Smiles, I took every shift offered and a few that weren't. The other hygienists traded Saturdays like favors. I hoarded them like lifeboats. Patients' parents whispered in the reception area like my name might stain if said too loudly. Dr. Brennan never asked questions, just signed my CE forms, and left extra gloves in my drawer when we ran low. In the break room, someone taped a verse on the fridge about truth setting people free. I stared at it until the letters blurred, and then I went back to scraping plaque with a smile. Patrick, to his credit, didn't weaponize the schedule. Every other weekend molded itself into every weekend and Wednesday dinners too, but always supervised, always chaperoned by presence or policy, as if proximity to me required a second pair of adult eyes to keep the air clean. With Patrick, conversations became paperwork, civil, efficient, annotated. He treated me like a colleague he trusted to do the task, but not to hold the keys. It was less cruel than I'd feared, and more painful than a scream. Darlene took to the sidelines like she'd been born in a lawn chair. She learned the names of the other soccer parents. She perfected the art of the post-game orange slice. She could cheer without smearing her lipstick. She found a house 2 streets from Patrick's and called it Good for the Kids. By spring, Keith from the bank, Patrick's business partner, was arriving at games with coffees for both of them, and Darlene laughed at something he said with her head tipped at a familiar angle. Watching it felt like waking up in someone else's dream. Everything looked plausible, and I was the only thing that didn't fit. Trevor, at 12, condensed into quiet. He wore his hoodies like armor, answered questions with weather reports. Fine. Okay, sure. But sometimes, mid-silence, I'd catch his eyes on me, measured, almost fierce, as if he were guarding a door I couldn't see. Gracie, 8 and incandescent, held her line openly. Aunt Darlene says we should call her Aunt Mom, she reported once, scrunching her nose. I told her I'd rather eat worms. I corrected her tone because that's what mothers do, and hugged her longer than she thought she needed because that's what I needed. October arrived with air so clean it made the porch flags look freshly cut. Our neighborhood morphed into papier-mâché ghosts and tidy pumpkins. Patrick texted me a photo of Gracie in a detective's hat she'd borrowed at school, and I laughed out loud in the laundromat when a dryer thumped like a heartbeat. She changed her mind every hour. Witch, superhero, zombie cheerleader, but detective kept circling back to us like a homing bird. On a Saturday that belonged to Patrick by the court's calendar, the bank's servers crashed. Emergency, he texted. Darlene has them at her place. He added a thumbs-up emoji as if to bless the arrangement with modern priesthood. I told myself this was what co-parenting looked like when everyone pretended to be adults. I told myself the machines downstairs weren't groaning louder than usual. I spent the morning cleaning. Scrubbing is a form of prayer when words fail, hands moving, mind unable to chase itself in circles because the rag is busy chasing the spill. At 2:47 p.m., my phone flashed Gracie, and I smiled reflexively as I wiped detergent off my wrist. The smile fell when I heard her sobbing. Mommy, she whispered, fierce and broken. Baby, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Where are you? In Aunt Darlene's closet, she said, as if admitting to trespass. I could hear the hush of carpeted space around her breath, a muffled stillness that turned my stomach to glass. I was looking for the costume box, and I found a different box. It's hidden behind her shoes. What kind of box? I asked, already standing, already putting on the jacket I rarely wore now. A shoebox, but bigger. It has pictures. She gulped. They're weird. It's you, but not you. There's a wig. It looks like your hair. Your old tooth uniform with your name. And there's a book. It says mean things about you. The room narrowed to a tunnel. I forced my voice to level ground. Where is Aunt Darlene right this second? The grocery store. She said Trevor could play Xbox. He's downstairs. Gracie's breath hitched. The book has dates and plans, and it says Phase 2. I closed my eyes, and the memory of a manila envelope flashed like summer lightning. Okay, I said, and the okay steadied both of us. Listen carefully. Do you know where her tablet is? The one you sometimes play games on? Yes, she whispered immediately. Gratitude threaded through the syllable. I need you to take pictures of everything. The wig, the uniform, the receipts, every page of the book. Every page, no skips. Make sure they're clear. If you hear her car or the garage door or footsteps, you put everything back exactly how you found it, and you leave the closet and go downstairs. Do you understand? Like a real detective, she said, the wobble in her voice smoothing into purpose. I can do that. You can. You're the bravest detective I know. I glanced at the clock. How far was Darlene's grocery store? How fast did she shop when she needed to be first on a scene she'd scripted? Gracie, one more thing. If Trevor comes up, tell him you're practicing your costume. Don't let him see the box yet. Not because we don't trust him, but because I need to keep him away from being scared. You can loop him in later if you need help. But first, get the pictures. Yes, ma'am. The formality made me want to cry. She was so small to be so brave. I heard the rustle of moving boxes through the phone, the distinct slide of a lid. Mommy? I'm here. There are receipts with names I don't know, she said. Romanos is on one. And Riverside Inn. There's a name, Brianna, and there's a title on the first page. Operation Sister Swap. For a second, all the air left the studio. I saw Darlene's neat handwriting in my mind, the way she'd label spices, the way she'd annotate a calendar. I gripped the counter to keep the room still. Okay, I said again. Photos. Then put it all back. The exact order. You're going to be perfect. She giggled, an involuntary spark in the dark, then muffled it, soldiering herself. The line filled with the click of a tablet camera and the whisper of turned pages. I paced the length of the microwave to the wall and back, counting the beats between shutter sounds the way I'd counted breaths in delivery rooms. When the washers below hit their spin, I pressed a finger in my free ear to hear my daughter better. Mom, she breathed after what felt like a year. What's Phase 3, normalize replacement mean? It means someone wrote instructions for a play that only cast villains, I said carefully. You just pulled the curtain. Through the line, a distant door thumped. Gracie gasped. She's home, she whispered. I heard the garage. I have 3 pages left. Skip to the last page, I said instantly, heart punching my ribs. Last page, last lines, snap twice. Then put the book back and the wig on top and the uniform under it. Wipe your fingerprints on your shirt, lightly, then get out. The camera clicked twice, brave and bright. I could hear her breath count the steps of her own hands. Then her voice, barely a thread. Done. Out now, I said. Walk, don't run. If she sees you, you're hunting for your costume. Say you got lost in the shoes because they smelled like powder. That's true, they always do. Go. I listened to the soft shuffle of her exit, the small pause of a hand against a doorframe, the micro courage of closing something that wanted to stay open. Then, in a new echo chamber, the hallway maybe, her whisper, I'm out. Go find Trevor, I said, relief flooding so fast my knees buckled. I slid down the cabinet and sat on the floor like a prayer had emptied me. Ask him to help you look for the costume box in the guest room. Keep him busy. I'm proud of you. I'm so proud. Like a detective? She said, smile audible. Like a detective who solved the case, I said. Downstairs in Darlene's house, a door opened. My daughter hung up. In my studio, the washers spun and the teaspoons sang, and a new sound rose between them, the steady drum of something long buried coming up for air. I pressed my phone to my chest and felt it vibrate with photographs traveling across the city toward me. Evidence, ugly and precise, moving like a lifeline through invisible wires. Somewhere across town, my sister carried grocery bags into a kitchen she'd practiced in. Somewhere above that kitchen, a closet kept a secret in the same order a brave child had found it. Somewhere between us, the truth began to run. The courthouse in downtown Nashville smelled like polished wood and old secrets. Its walls absorbed the echoes of other people's mistakes, and that morning I joined the chorus. Miss Thude, sharp as a scalpel, steady as a sermon, walked beside me, her heels tapping judgment into the marble. She had eyes that cut through niceties, hair clipped into efficiency, and a file so thick it looked like an accusation in itself. Inside it were 43 photographed pages from a spiral notebook titled Operation Sister Swap, 30 receipts, a wig order, and a timeline so detailed it felt like scripture. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. By 9:04, every head in the courtroom had turned toward Darlene. She sat at the respondent's table, navy suit, pearls, hair coiled like diplomacy. Patrick was behind her, one row back, his hands folded so tight his knuckles were the same color as the paper he was holding. He hadn't spoken to me since the emergency motion, but I'd seen the way his thumb trembled over the first page of the evidence list. Judge Morrison presided again, the same man who'd once looked at me like a cautionary tale. Now he looked tired, older, but still in control. "Ms. Thude," he said, tone clipped, "you're making serious allegations." "Your Honor," she replied, "we're presenting serious proof." She didn't warm up. She didn't ease in. She went straight for the jugular, the journal. The courtroom air thickened as she read Darlene's handwriting aloud. March 3rd. Watched M. cook with P. He doesn't see how she wastes him. May 19th. Borrowed her uniform from car trunk. She won't notice. Fits perfectly. June 15th. Located Brianna. Through back page. Similar build. Wig ordered. October 10th. Conference confirmed. Begin final phase. By the time Miss Thude reached the entry titled October 12th, Execute, the room had gone silent enough to hear the bailiff breathe. Darlene's lawyer tried to object, phrases like context, mental health, fabrication, but Judge Morrison waved him down. Continue. Then came the receipts. The wig purchased from a theatrical supplier, the Riverside Inn reservation made under D. Cray. The Romano's dinner paid in cash, but reserved under a pseudonym that matched a card charge from Darlene's own account 3 weeks earlier. "Your Honor," Miss Thude said, voice smooth but electric, "we will call the individuals listed on those receipts." The first witness was Brianna Wells, younger than expected, nervous but firm. She clasped her hands on the rail, knuckles pink. "She hired me," Brianna said, nodding toward Darlene. 2 years ago, early October. She said it was for a role-playing job. "What kind of role?" Miss Thude asked. "She paid me to dress up like someone else. She gave me a wig, a uniform with a name tag that said Maris, and told me to meet a man she'd also hired. Said she wanted to take photos to show how easy it was to fake cheating evidence. She was very specific about the angle, never show my full face." The gallery erupted, murmurs, gasps, disbelief spilling like a tide. Patrick's head dropped into his hands. Darlene sat motionless, her posture flawless, her silence rehearsed. Next came the waiter from Romanos. He'd testified at the original divorce trial. Now, looking at me again, he swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," he said. I remember thinking the woman had the same laugh, but maybe I was wrong. It was dark, crowded. I guess I just assumed. The male escort followed, confirming Brianna's account. His voice was steady, detached. She told me to act affectionate, but not too obvious. Said she was testing how convincing the photos would look. We ate, walked outside, went to the hotel, posed for pictures at the door, and left. That was it. Each word rearranged the courtroom oxygen. Every denial I'd once whispered into silence now had a body, a receipt, a timestamp. And then came Trevor. He looked small against the witness stand, 12 years old, shoulders squared, in a suit jacket too big for him. He didn't glance at me until Miss Thude asked his name. Then he met my eyes just long enough to say, "I'm sorry." "Trevor," she said gently, "do you remember the night your mom was supposed to be at her conference?" He nodded. "Aunt Darlene told me not to tell anyone something," he said quietly. "She said if I did, Mom would go to jail." Patrick's head jerked up. Darlene froze. "Tell us what happened," Miss Thude said. "That night, after Mom called from Memphis, Aunt Darlene told us she needed medicine for Gracie's stomach. But Gracie wasn't sick. She left us with Mrs. Patterson next door and took Mom's car. She was wearing Mom's jacket and had a bag with her. I saw a wig in it. It looked like Mom's hair. I thought maybe it was for Halloween." "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "She said sometimes adults have to do hard things to protect family," Trevor whispered. "She said Mom would never see us again if I told. I wanted to protect Mom, so I didn't tell. I'm sorry." By the time he finished, Patrick's chair scraped backward. He stumbled to his feet like a man punched in the stomach. The bailiff caught his shoulder before he fell. Judge Morrison's gavel struck once. "Order," he said, but his voice trembled. They called a recess. When we returned, Darlene's mask was gone. Her face had folded into something feral, sweat shining, lipstick cracked. She hissed at her lawyer, at Patrick, at me. The judge looked at her for a long, almost pitying moment. "Ms. Cray," he said, "in 30 years on this bench, I have seen negligence, greed, and cruelty. But this level of orchestration, this deliberate perversion of truth and justice, is rare even here." He turned to me. "Mrs. Ellington, this court owes you a debt it cannot repay. Every ruling in your prior case is vacated, effective immediately. Full custody restored. Equitable redistribution of assets. I recommend you pursue both criminal and civil action against the defendant." Then to the bailiff, "Take her into custody." The sound Darlene made as they cuffed her was not a word. It was a wail, something torn loose from the bone, animal and ancient. She twisted toward me as they led her away, eyes blazing through mascara streaks. "You think you've won," she spat, "but you don't even know how deep it goes." The courtroom buzzed as she vanished through the side door. Patrick stood frozen, staring at the empty space where she'd been, his face drained of everything but shock. The judge's voice softened. "This hearing is adjourned." For a moment, no one moved. Then the scrape of benches, the shuffle of shoes, the muted hum of people realizing they had just witnessed something that would follow them home. I sat still, the air too heavy to breathe. Vindication didn't feel like triumph. It felt like collapse, like standing in the wreckage and realizing the walls you built around love had been hollowed out long before they fell. Patrick approached after everyone else had gone. His eyes were wet, unfocused. "I don't know how to apologize for something that doesn't deserve forgiveness," he said quietly. "Then don't," I told him. "Just be a good father. That's all that's left to fix." He nodded, unable to meet my gaze. Outside, the Tennessee sun blazed bright and indifferent. Cameras clicked somewhere far behind us, news crews catching the tail end of someone else's tragedy. But I didn't turn. I walked past them, the courthouse steps hard under my heels, and told myself this was what survival sounded like. Not applause, not relief, just breath in, breath out, and the faint rustle of paper in my purse, 43 pages of proof that monsters sometimes wear your face. 6 months later, the scent of tomato sauce filled the small kitchen of my new house, a house that didn't echo with other people's ghosts. The walls were bare except for the drawings Gracie taped up from school, uneven lines of color labeled Detective Mom and Family Pizza Night. Trevor sat at the table, grumbling over algebra, his pencil tapping the wood in sync with the bubbling sauce. It was an ordinary Sunday, but ordinary had become my favorite kind of miracle. Patrick was due to drop by soon. He'd offered to bring dessert. We didn't call it family dinner anymore, but it was close enough. Civil, steady, stitched together by a shared desire to heal what could be healed. There were still quiet edges between us, ghosts that refused to leave the room, but they no longer had power to speak. I was learning to live with silence that didn't hurt. When the doorbell rang, Trevor called out, "Dad says he's got hot fudge too." I smiled, stirring the pot. "Of course he does," I murmured. "He always shows up with something sweet when the world's been bitter." Gracie barreled into the kitchen wearing her detective costume, fedora crooked, magnifying glass smudged with fingerprints. "Mom, can I tell Dad about how I solved a real case again?" she asked, practically bouncing. I crouched down to her level. "You can tell him as many times as you want, Detective Ellington. That story never gets old." She beamed, and for a heartbeat I saw the child who'd whispered through tears from a closet, brave enough to hold the truth in her small hands. Patrick came in a moment later, a paper bag of ice cream and fudge balanced like an offering. "Hey," he said, his tone uncertain, respectful. "Smells like home." "It's spaghetti night," I replied. "Our old tradition." He glanced around the kitchen. Simpler, smaller, but warm. "You've made it beautiful," he said. We ate together, the four of us, the air thick with garlic and quiet laughter. Trevor complained about quadratic equations. Gracie recited every line from a detective cartoon she'd memorized. Patrick helped clear the table without being asked, like muscle memory. When he washed the last plate, he looked up, water running over his hands. I still see her sometimes, he admitted. In dreams. She's always saying I should have known. You shouldn't have, I said gently. She trained you not to. He nodded, guilt and relief mixing in his face. She fooled everyone, he said. Not Gracie, I reminded him, and his smile broke through like a hesitant sunrise. No, he said softly, not Gracie. After he left, the house settled into its new rhythm. Trevor's pencil scratching upstairs, Gracie humming in the hallway, the fridge humming steady as a heartbeat. I leaned against the counter and stared out the window into the dusk, the yard still bare of landscaping but already feeling like mine. There were weeds, yes, but they were my weeds. Darlene's sentencing had come and gone. 18 months in prison, 3 years probation. She'd lost her real estate license, her reputation, and every friend who'd once envied her charm. The civil suit settled quietly. Enough money for this small house, enough to start again. Last I heard, she was living with our cousin Mara in Arizona, still claiming she'd been framed, that I'd somehow orchestrated my own downfall for sympathy. She'd sent 6 letters from prison. I hadn't read any of them. One evening, a month after I moved in, an email alert flashed on my phone. Tennessee Department of Corrections. Inmate visitation request. Darlene Cray. I deleted it without opening it, just like the 5 before. Forgiveness is a door I no longer keep unlocked. Sometimes I think of her handwriting, the neat, perfect loops that plan destruction the way other people plan weddings. Sometimes I wonder what story she tells herself now, what version of me exists in her mind. But then Gracie laughs from the living room, and I remember that some stories don't need retelling. They need endings. Trevor came downstairs later, taller than I remembered him being even that morning. He hesitated at the doorway, holding his math book like a shield. "Mom," he said, voice soft, "I should have told you about the wig that night." I shook my head immediately. You were 10, Trevor. You were protecting your family. She used that against you. I still feel like I helped her, he said. Like I stood by and watched. I put a hand on his shoulder. You told the truth when it mattered most. That's what makes you brave. That's what makes you mine. He smiled a little, eyes wet, and leaned his head briefly against my shoulder. For a second, the distance of 2 years collapsed into that simple contact. Later, after they were asleep, I sat on the porch steps with a cup of tea. The night hummed softly. Crickets, the faraway train, the rustle of trees, the kind of peace I hadn't recognized in years. I thought about how trust breaks, how it shatters, how it cuts, and how, if you're patient, you can gather the pieces and build something new. Not what you had, but something honest, something that doesn't need pretending. The truth had nearly destroyed me, but it had also rebuilt me, piece by piece, witness by witness, page by page of a notebook titled Operation Sister Swap. Sometimes I still wake up thinking I hear Darlene's voice downstairs, humming while she loads the dishwasher. Then I open my eyes and remember, this is my house now, my life, my kitchen. No one's rehearsing me anymore. No one's stealing my part. The next morning, Gracie burst into my room holding her magnifying glass. "Mom, I found the mystery of the missing sock," she announced proudly. I laughed so hard I spilled my coffee. It landed on the quilt, spreading in the shape of a heart. Maybe that's what survival looks like. Coffee stains, algebra, laughter, and a little girl who still believes she can solve any case. Maybe forgiveness isn't letting someone back in. Maybe it's just refusing to let them own the ending. I looked around the house, our mismatched furniture, the sunlight slicing through half-closed blinds, the faint echo of Gracie's giggles drifting down the hall, and I realized something. This wasn't the life I had planned, but it was the life I had earned. And it was finally, blessedly, mine.